Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and it's time again for us to go for a wander round paradise. This morning we're in the snow, which is a first. Last week we were still in the Champions League, and now we're not. How did that go, and how did we respond yesterday in Perth? Well, it was a disappointing night over in Rome, wasn't it? Champions League football is all but done. There is one final fixture, of course, but it's a dead rubber for Celtic. Hopefully Celtic will be able to get something from that game and give some kind of respectability to the points tally at the end of this campaign. Bitterly disappointing, particularly away from home. And I think that when we look at the game in Rome, Lazio were there for the taking. Not great shakes by any manner of means. They brought on the real quality in Immobile, and he was able to get the brace. But it was a really disappointing evening for Celtic, and it left us again looking at all the usual issues that we've been talking about all season in relation to recruitment, the lack of quality and the lack of bite in certain areas. There's been an inconsistency, I think, with the tempo of Celtic and with the urgency, and we saw it in both halves of the game yesterday against St Johnstone. So we were looking for a response. We looked at the starting 11, and before the game, on A Celtic State of Mind, we were talking about that being the ideal team to line up at Perth against the wily old Craig Levine's St Johnstone. We were looking for a convincing victory, something to raise the spirits as we go through a tricky campaign in December before the January transfer window opens up. But Celtic, as Celtic do, served up something completely unexpected. I said the response that we got from Celtic against St Johnstone was unexpected. Should it have been? We've heard before about European hangovers. Celtic have had topsy-turvy in terms of their consistency of performance this season, so maybe it should have been as unexpected as that. However, the level of performance was really poor, and that first 45 would be up there with the poorest that we've seen this season. And, you know, looking at the half-time break, there was a mixture of anger and frustration during that 15-minute interval when we went live on A Celtic State of Mind to talk about the first half. Of course, there were individual performances that were not up to scratch, but there was a lack of bite in the team, a lack of tempo. There was no creativity. It was almost as if we were easy again to play against, and particularly, when we've got a corner kick. I said yesterday we'd be as well just giving St Johnstone the ball back. Beautifully flighted cross in, absolutely no bite in the box, no one attacking the corners, and the same could be said for defending them as well. Again, we lost a really sloppy goal to a cross ball that we just failed to defend, really. I think Joe Hart needs to really command his area better. I think, our defenders have got to be stronger. They've got to be more imposing, and it puts us on the back foot because we were struggling to really get into the groove prior to going behind, and at half-time we were questioning whether or not we changed the shape as well as the personnel. Brendan Rodgers did that. He came back fighting. We'll be talking about his post-match interview in just a few moments as well. But the changes that he made were huge in bringing Celtic back into the game, and ultimately were the reason why we got the victory yesterday in Perth. We've since found out that Brendan Rodgers was extremely angry at half-time, and I think he's gone through that team. And it's been probably the old hairdryer treatment, something that we certainly haven't seen much in the interviews that Brendan has given, particularly since he's come back. There's been a real approach from Brendan Rodgers that's been measured, it's been balanced, and, really humble as well. And I think that, there's been a change really over the weekend, and it was prompted by that poor display in the first half. Not just that things weren't working out, there just seemed to be a lack of application in some areas of the park. The changes had to be made. What changes were made? Well, O'Kane came into the play, and I think the minute he comes into the play, Kyogo looks like a different animal. Now, there needs to be a change of shape in order to play the two players, unless, of course, you play Kyogo in a more familiar wide role. I say more familiar because he played a lot of his football in Japan there, and also for the international side. So there's a lot to think about. O comes in and makes an instant impact. He got right in about the St Johnstone defence. It took two of them to stop a move from O within minutes of the second half. And then, of course, Mikey Johnston comes into the fray. Mickey Johnston's a guy who deserves an immense amount of credit because he's been written off season upon season upon season. And in last season, he was loaned out to Vitória Guimarães in Portugal. He had a decent season, so much so that he broke into the international fold under Stephen Kenny's Ireland. And he played really well, getting man of the match performances and scoring goals. The mental fortitude of that boy has to be, stated, because to go through that length of time being written off, it would have been easy for him to disappear, get a transfer and be forgotten about. But he stuck around and he's reminded the gaffer over the last couple of weeks what he can do. He was very direct when he came on, he played with purpose, and of course he was involved in the goals as well. So big kudos to Mikey Johnston. Callum McGregor, like Joe Hart, has the leadership experience and the qualities that you require when you're under the cosh, when you need somebody to pull you out of the mire. And it was Callum McGregor who played the captain's role with a fantastic strike, a brilliant goal from the captain just when we needed it as a team, a fan base, and I think Callum needed that goal as well. Brings us right back into the game. And we went old school by following the ball into the net, grabbing it, getting it back to the centre circle and starting the game again, because we knew we had to get a winner. Matt O'Reilly scores the goal that puts us ahead. I think O'Reilly was pretty poor in the first half. He had a brilliant second half. Great strike. This is what he's added to his game. The goals. We spoke about it under Ange Postecoglou. He just had to add the goals to his games. And he's done it now. And he's done it under Brendan Rodgers. And you look at that. After he celebrates the goal, he points to one player who was massive in the build-up, and that was Hugo Furuhashi. He was only able and allowed to get deep and involved in the play because of O was on the park. So tactically it was brilliant by Brendan Rodgers. Hugo played his part. Matt O'Reilly scores a brilliant goal. And what about the third goal? The importance of Joe Hart. Yes, I've criticised him for the first half opener, and rightly so. But he pulled off one of the best saves I've seen from Joe Hart, and it started a move that went through Chimoki Awata, and then O again in the centre of the park doing all the dirty business. This is a bit that might be forgotten about because it looks like a free-flowing move once it gets to Mikey Johnston. But O did the dirty part. He's on the deck, he's scrapping for the ball, he releases Mikey Johnston, pinpoint accuracy with the through ball, and look at the touch of James Forrest and the finish. He's still contributing to Celtic 15 seasons in. That was an important win. But I'll tell you something that was even more important was Brendan Rodgers' reaction after the game. So Brendan Rodgers gave his post-match press conference and he was firing on all cylinders, wasn't he? He wasn't a happy chappy, but I liked it. I liked what I seen from Brendan Rodgers and what I heard. I think since he's come back, we've seen a different version of him. He's been kind of underplayed. He's been underplaying it himself. And we've got to really look at the scenario he's walked into here. He has claimed ownership of all the players in the summer, but he had to. I mean, what was his option? To say that he didn't sign them and therefore maybe lose the confidence of the players that have come in? There's 9 players there. So he had to claim ownership of that. And he had to claim ownership because obviously he's just been employed by the Celtic board and he's been given kudos to the recruitment team and the strategy, and he's pinpointed the fact that was one of the biggest changes since his first time round, was the way that we did business and bringing players in. So I don't blame Brendan for claiming that. He's claimed ownership of it, but I think what we're going to see now is a laser focused approach of Brendan Rodgers bringing in the players that he thinks is going to add the quality to the Celtic side. He spoke about a passiveness, people being comfortable in the first half. We don't know who he was talking about. We'll all have our opinions on that. I know that Yang had a particularly bad game. I don't think it was through him being comfortable or passive. I mean, the effort was there from Yang. It's just that it didn't work out for him, and I think he's going to lose his jersey for Wednesday night against Hibernian here at Celtic Park. But I love to see that fire in Brendan's belly, and it's right at the perfect time going into the January transfer window. He's laid down the gauntlet for the Celtic board. They've got to respond. We need players of quality coming into this football club in January, and only then can we really see the Brendan Rodgers side and firing on all cylinders like he was at the weekend. Great to see him back. That was the first time we've seen him with that kind of approach and that reaction, and you know what, I think he echoed a lot of the Celtic fans' feelings at that time as well. Turned out to be a great victory for Celtic. And Acsom, what have we been up to? Well, we've got the Johan Mjällby gig coming up. It's 2 weeks tonight. Couple of tickets available, ticket link underneath this video. And of course, we've got the charity weekender just before that. We are going to be supporting wee Jamie Tierney. Duchenne muscular dystrophy is something that has seriously affected that young boy's life, and we are going to be helping towards treatment by raising cash over the entire weekend. If you want to get involved in the fundraising endeavours, again, there's a link underneath this particular video. Thank you everybody for getting involved in the Wander Round Paradise. Join us again tomorrow at 12:30 for a Celtic State of Mind.